On June 30th, 2019, a 39-year-old man named Yoon Sang Yup, along with his wife and a few friends, went on a picnic at Gapyeong Valley, located in Gapyeong County, in the heart of Gyeonggi Province, South Korea. This area is a popular tourist destination. Due to its proximity to downtown Seoul and convenient transportation, it attracts many visitors. One of the well-known attractions in Gapyeong is Longsi Waterfall. What was supposed to be a joyful and unforgettable trip turned into a meticulously planned and cunning murder. Around 8 p.m., Yoon Sang Yup suddenly fell into the stream and drowned. At the time of the incident, neither his wife nor his friends noticed what had happened, missing the critical moment to rescue him. It wasn't until later that they discovered Yoon had passed away. His friends quickly reported the incident to the police. After conducting an investigation, the police determined that Yoon's death was accidental, with no signs of external force. As a result, they concluded that it was a typical drowning accident, with no suspects involved. Despite the accident occurring at a famous tourist spot, the incident quickly faded from public memory, with many people unaware it had even happened. However, in November, Yoon Sang Yup's wife, Eun Hae, registered to appear on the South Korean TV show Unanswered Questions. This show is quite popular for exposing troubling issues within South Korean society. During the program, Eun Hae accused a South Korean insurance company of repeatedly refusing to pay out the insurance money following her husband's death. Before his passing, Yoon Sang Yup had purchased an insurance policy. In the event of an accident or his death, the insurance company was obligated to pay 800 million won, equivalent to approximately 600,000 USD, to his next of kin. In the months following her husband's death, Eun Hae persistently requested the insurance company to release this payment. However, the company refused, suspecting her involvement in her husband's accident. The reporter's investigation was officially broadcast, immediately sparking heated debates within the community. The production team also shared the investigation results with the police. In February 2021, South Korean police decided to reopen the investigation into the drowning incident in Gapyeong. After 9 months of thorough research and investigation, the prosecution finally released their official findings. So, what is the truth here? Let's revisit the events of that day. On June 30th, 2019, Eun Hae organized a trip to Gapyeong Valley for a group of 7 people. First, we need to clarify the relationships among these 7 individuals. The first couple was Eun Hae and her husband, Yoon Sang Yup. The second couple consisted of a man named Lee and his girlfriend, Choi. The third couple was Kim and his girlfriend, Lee. Finally, there was Cho Hyun-soo. We need to pay special attention to Cho Hyun-soo. Not only was he the same age as Eun Hae, but he also had a very close relationship with her. Yes, they were secretly involved with each other. Yoon Sang Yup was, of course, unaware that his wife was cheating on him. Furthermore, she was also secretly involved with the man named Lee. Out of the 7 people on this trip, aside from his wife, Eun Hae, Yoon Sang Yup did not know anyone else. They were all friends of Eun Hae. Around 3 p.m., the 7 people arrived at the waterfall and began their outing, enjoying swimming and playing together. However, Yoon Sang Yup, who was very afraid of water, hesitated to join in. Despite this, Eun Hae insisted that her husband sit on an inflatable float. Cho Hyun-soo then pulled the float into deeper water, causing Yoon Sang Yup to become extremely frightened. He repeatedly asked them to stop, but Cho Hyun-soo ignored his pleas and continued pulling the float farther out. Meanwhile, Eun Hae casually sat on the shore, enjoying the breeze. As Yoon Sang Yup struggled to paddle the float back to shore, Cho Hyun-soo shook the float vigorously, leaving Yoon Sang Yup to helplessly beg for it to stop. This video was recorded around 6 p.m. It's evident that Yoon Sang Yup was genuinely terrified of the water. After the video was shared on social media, it quickly garnered widespread attention, amassing over 5 million views within just a week, even surpassing interest in the South Korean presidential election at that time. Returning to that day, at around 8 p.m., As dusk was falling, the group was preparing to leave. Kim and his girlfriend Lee had already gone to the parking lot. However, at that moment, Eun Hae suddenly suggested an idea: to jump off the cliff into the river before heading home, so as not to waste the trip. Yoon Sang Yup was clearly reluctant to take on this challenge, but with 4 out of the 5 remaining people agreeing, he was pressured to join them on the 13-foot-high jumping platform. The 2 men who agreed to jump, Cho Hyun-soo and Lee, both had unusual relationships with Eun Hae. Seeing her husband's hesitation, Eun Hae taunted his masculinity and even implied that she would do it herself if he didn't dare. Ultimately, Yoon reluctantly agreed and jumped along with the other men. As you may already know, Yoon Sang Yup tragically drowned. At this point, Cho Hyun-soo called the police. When the authorities arrived, they retrieved Yoon's body from the water. However, during this investigation, the police discovered that Eun Hae was a habitual liar. She failed the polygraph test. She claimed she didn't hear her husband's cries for help, but Choi, who was with Lee at the time, confirmed hearing a loud scream. Furthermore, according to the forensic examination, numerous air bubbles were found in both of Yoon Sang Yup's lungs. The bubbles were formed due to the victim's continuous struggle in the water. In simpler terms, after falling into the water, Yoon Sang Yup repeatedly thrashed about in an attempt to save himself. The noise from such splashing would not have been quiet, yet no one claimed to have heard it. Cho Hyun-soo told the police that Yoon Sang Yup's jump point was very close to where he was. After noticing something was wrong, Choi and Eun Hae went to look for a life preserver, while Cho Hyun-soo swam to the spot where Yoon Sang Yup had jumped into the water. Logically, in such close proximity, you would expect him to be able to find Yoon. However, Cho Hyun-soo claimed he couldn't see Yoon Sang Yup because it was too dark. Whether Cho Hyun-soo was trying to save Yoon or harm him remains unclear. After the incident, as Yoon Sang Yup's wife, Eun Hae showed no signs of grief. Instead, she casually spent time with her lover and demanded 800 million won, approximately $600,000, from the insurance company. However, the insurance company wasn't easily fooled. They discovered that this insurance policy was just 4 hours away from expiring due to unpaid premiums, when right before it did, Yoon Sang Yup suddenly drowned. Suspecting an insurance fraud, they immediately refused to pay the claim. This turn of events left Eun Hae in a state of anxiety. She felt compelled to reach out to the media to accuse the insurance company. However, what Eun Hae didn't anticipate was that her accusation would lead to severe consequences for both her and her boyfriend. Moreover, many people began to wonder, what was the motive behind Eun Hae driving her husband to his death? According to investigations, Eun Hae was born in 1991 in Yeonsu-dong, Incheon, South Korea, into a family where both parents were disabled, living in extreme poverty. The entire family crowded into a small home of just 215 square feet, relying on government assistance to survive. Initially, Eun Hae's family had no social standing, and they were relatively unknown. However, in March 2002, their lives took a significant turn. A program called Sunday Night Love House, which helps build and renovate homes for those in need, reached out to Eun Hae's family to offer assistance. At that time, Eun Hae was just a 6th grader, appearing sweet, well-behaved, and obedient. Despite the family's poverty, she remained optimistic. She never looked down on her parents and dreamed of becoming a singer when she grew up so that she could take care of them and repay them for their care and upbringing. Eun Hae even promised, "When I grow up, I will help those in need as much as I have been helped." After the program aired, her image as a kind, filial, and hardworking girl quickly won the hearts of the South Korean public. She was affectionately dubbed a little angel and became a model of the good child in the eyes of parents across South Korea. However, things soon changed. The angelic child from those days disappeared. Eun Hae seemed to forget her dream of becoming a singer. According to investigations, at the age of 15, Eun Hae began working as a sugar baby for a middle-aged man. After receiving 160,000 won, equivalent to about $120. From him, Eun Hae felt that this was a way to make money without much effort, relying only on her looks. Through introductions from friends and the internet, she enticed and became a sugar baby for numerous men. However, once she had money, Eun Hae paid no attention to her parents. It was during this time that she met Cho Hyun-soo, who was actually a pimp specializing in finding clients for her. They collaborated to make money and eventually developed a romantic relationship. Eun Hae even created a personal list for her clients, where she recorded their characteristics and preferences. She also engaged in theft and other services to make money more quickly. This behavior made Eun Hae a regular at the police station, facing multiple charges. From a young age, Eun Hae had to appear in South Korea's juvenile court 5 times and was investigated by the police on more than 10 occasions. At just 19 years old, Eun Hae became pregnant and gave birth to a baby girl, with the father's identity unknown. Even while pregnant, she continued to frequent bars to lure men. After her daughter was born, Eun Hae heartlessly left her in the care of her disabled parents while she continued her lifestyle of partying and reckless behavior. Despite making substantial money through her sugar baby activities and scams, she spent it lavishly, always wanting the most expensive things, leaving her with no savings. Additionally, comparing her current appearance to childhood photos, it's evident that Lee has undergone numerous cosmetic surgeries. In the following years, she continued relationships with multiple men, earning considerable money from them. In 2016, Eun Hae met Yoon Sang Yup, who was born in 1980, making him 11 years older than her. From the photos, Yoon Sang Yup appeared to be kind and unassuming, which was true in reality. Yoon Sang Yup was always hardworking and meticulous. He worked as a researcher at a large company in South Korea, where he had been employed for 15 years, earning an annual salary of 64 million won, which is equivalent to nearly $50,000. While this income didn't make him wealthy, it was considered quite decent in South Korea. Yoon Sang Yup treated Eun Hae very well. Whatever she asked for, he was always willing to pay for, while being frugal and never spending excessively on himself. He handed over his entire monthly salary to Eun Hae. Later, they registered their marriage in the fall of 2016. By conventional standards, a woman who meets such a good man should be grateful. But for Eun Hae, that wasn't enough. What she desired wasn't a good man or a decent family, but rather someone wealthy. After their marriage, she continually made demands to siphon money from her husband, and she succeeded every time. However, Yoon Sang Yup's excessive indulgence did not bring him happiness. Instead, it led him into tragedy. Their marriage was quite unusual. The two did not resemble a typical married couple. After they were married, Yoon Sang Yup's parents gave him 100 million won. Combined with borrowed funds, he was able to purchase a nice house. But even that wasn't enough to satisfy Eun Hae's vanity. She used the excuse of not wanting her husband to endure a long commute to make Yoon Sang Yup rent an apartment close to his workplace, where he lived alone. The new house was reserved for her and her friends to gather. The couple only saw each other on weekends. But even on weekends, Eun Hae would find reasons to avoid meeting her husband. As a result, their weekly meetings dwindled to just once a month. The couple did not have a wedding ceremony or a traditional bride procession. They simply signed the marriage registration papers. Before buying a house in Incheon, Yoon Sang Yup had never met Eun Hae's family. It wasn't until one day when he couldn't find her that he decided to visit her parents, which was the only time he met them. The two families and their relatives never met each other. Despite Yoon Sang Yup's persistent urging, Eun Hae always found excuses to avoid it. In general, she didn't want anyone to know that she was married. Even more puzzling was the stark difference in their lifestyles. While Eun Hae frequently traveled, socialized with friends, and dined out daily, Yoon Sang Yup, after giving all his money to his wife, didn't even have enough for basic meals. According to his colleagues, he became cold and withdrawn after getting married. Previously, he had never borrowed money, but after marriage, he frequently asked to borrow small amounts from colleagues, such as just 3,000 won, about $2.30. This suggests he was so hungry that he needed to borrow money just to buy a meal or a bottle of water. The text messages recovered by the police from Yoon Sang Yup's phone were truly shocking. When made public, they left the entire country of South Korea in disbelief. For instance, on June 28th, just 2 days before his death, Yoon Sang Yup messaged a colleague, saying that while he could eat at the company cafeteria during workdays, he had nothing to eat on weekends. Over the course of 2 weeks, he lost 31 pounds. The car that Yoon Sang Yup financed was also entirely at Lee Eun Hae's disposal. His responsibility was to repay the loan and cover the fuel costs. Despite all his efforts, Lee Eun Hae was never satisfied and constantly demanded more money from him. To please her, Yoon Sang Yup even resorted to borrowing money with interest, including online loans. Fortunately, he ultimately didn't go through with these transactions. During the investigation, the police discovered that the money from the loans Yoon Sang Yup took out ended up in Lee Eun Hae's pockets. In fact, over the 2 years since their marriage, Lee Eun Hae demanded approximately 2 billion won, equivalent to $1.5 million, from her husband for various reasons. It could be said that this marriage completely transformed Yoon Sang Yup's life, leading him from a simple, peaceful existence to utter despair. But deceiving her unfortunate husband was not the extent of Lee Eun Hae's cruelty. She had an even more sinister plan. From the moment they married, she began plotting. Just 5 months after their marriage, Lee Eun Hae started purchasing life insurance policies for her husband, eventually buying 4 policies with a total coverage of 800 million won. Due to financial difficulties, Lee Eun Hae often fell behind on the premium payments. However, each time the policies were about to expire, she would manage to renew them just in time. This shows how much she valued these insurance policies. Unfortunately, Yoon Sang Yup, being the trusting and kind-hearted person he was, did not suspect anything and continued to follow his wife's wishes. Then came June 30th, 2019. 4 hours before the 4 insurance policies were set to expire due to unpaid premiums, the accident happened. Just hours before the policies were about to lapse, Lee Eun Hae chose the late evening, when visibility was poor, and pressured her non-swimming husband to jump into the water. The 2 other individuals involved in this final act both had secret relationships with her. The person closest to where Yoon Sang Yup jumped was none other than Lee Eun Hae's lover, Cho Hyun-soo. However, he pretended not to notice and made no attempt to save Yoon Sang Yup. After the incident, Lee Eun Hae and Cho Hyun-soo went to the basement apartment that Yoon Sang Yup had rented twice to clean up and remove all data from his computer. Naturally, she also forfeited the security deposit on the apartment and immediately terminated the lease. As the investigation deepened, the police uncovered even more shocking details. It turned out that Lee Eun Hae had been planning to kill her husband for quite some time. In February 2019, at a farm in Yangyang, Gangwon Province, Lee Eun Hae mixed pufferfish poison into Yoon Sang Yup's food. However, the poison wasn't potent enough, and Yoon Sang Yup only suffered from a stomachache, fortunately surviving the attempt. The police also found chat records between Lee Eun Hae and Hyun-soo, in which she clearly complained, "I used enough of the poison, but it didn't work." In May 2019, at a trout fishing spot in Gyeonggi Province, Yoon Sang Yup, who couldn't swim, fell into the water by accident. At that time, Lee Eun Hae stood on the shore and did nothing to help him. Luckily, a friend of Yoon Sang Yup arrived just in time to pull him out of the water. The friend initially thought that perhaps Lee Eun Hae didn't know how to swim, which was why she didn't jump in to save her husband. However, later on, in a video that Lee Eun Hae posted from another outing, it became clear that she was a skilled and confident swimmer. In reality, this marriage was a trap from the start. Neither Lee Eun Hae's family nor her friends knew that she was married. Even the friends who accompanied her to Gapyeong Valley that day were unaware. Except for her accomplice, Cho Hyun-soo, none of the others knew that Yoon Sang Yup was Lee Eun Hae's husband. When introducing her husband, she simply referred to him as a close friend. At this point, the investigation into Yoon Sang Yup's case was considered complete, but the investigation into suspect Lee Eun Hae continued. the police discovered that she might be linked to other crimes. Before marrying Yoon Sang Yup in 2016, Eun Hae had been married to 2 other men, and coincidentally, they met similar fates. In 2010, Eun Hae's boyfriend at the time, Tim, was involved in a car accident at the Saepao intersection in Incheon. Afterward, Eun Hae received a large insurance payout. In 2014, this woman went on a vacation to Pattaya, Thailand, with her fiancé, Mr. Lee. During a scuba diving trip, her fiancé tragically drowned. As his fiancé, Eun Hae, once again received an insurance payout. Between 2016 and 2019, Eun Hae engaged in several other insurance fraud schemes. On December 13, 2021, the prosecution summoned Eun Hae and Hyun Soo for questioning. When they were called in for a second time, the two disappeared without a trace, triggering a large-scale manhunt. On March 30, 2022, South Korean police issued an official arrest warrant for Eun Hae and Cho Hyun Soo, charging them with murder and insurance fraud. The case caused a public outcry in South Korea, with many people questioning why it took until 2022 for the case to come to light, even though the incident occurred in 2019. People wondered if no one had been suspicious of Eun Hae earlier. In reality, there were suspicions, and some people had already begun investigating. There were also discussions about the case online, with some even suspecting Eun Hae. However, Eun Hae and Cho Hyun Soo were very active on the internet, and they quickly reported any negative comments. As a result, some videos and posts were taken down, and in some cases, people were even forced to pay damages. This effectively kept the case out of the public eye until now. In truth, the renewed police investigation was largely driven by Eun Hae's insatiable greed. She had reached out to a television program to accuse the insurance company, likely never imagining that she was, in effect, incriminating herself. This case sparked widespread media coverage and launched a massive online search for the culprits. On April 12, 2022, Busan police received a tip that someone had seen Eun Hae and Hyun Soo at a restaurant in Gyeomjong, Busan. The police immediately rushed to the scene, but unfortunately, the couple spotted there were not the 2 suspects. Given that this was during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, everyone was wearing masks, which made identification difficult. However, the trip wasn't entirely in vain. When the police investigated the man who resembled Hyun Soo, they accidentally discovered that he was also a fugitive wanted in another case. The South Korean police monitored the bank accounts and phone signals of Eun Hae and Cho Hyun Soo. But since the arrest warrant was issued, neither of them had used their accounts or phones, indicating that they were well prepared for their escape. Interestingly, besides the organizations actively assisting the police in solving the case, several fan groups emerged in support of Eun Hae. Finally, on April 16, 2022, the police apprehended Eun Hae and Cho Hyun Soo. The South Korean police reported that, since early April, they had been surveilling the area near Samseong Station on Line 3 of the Seoul Metro in Goyang, Gyeonggi Province. They spotted images of Eun Hae and Cho Hyun Soo. As a result, the police narrowed their search and began a methodical hunt. Just as they were closing in on the suspect's hiding place, the police received a sudden call from Eun Hae's father, who informed them that the two were hiding in a nearby office building. The police quickly arrived on the scene and captured the suspects at a newly constructed office building in Daeokgyang District, Goyang. When arrested, both appeared exhausted and significantly thinner. The only belongings they had were a few bottles of water. During questioning, the pair revealed, "We always chose crowded city centers to hide." They believed that the most dangerous place was the safest. After their arrest, both were transferred to the local prosecutor's office in Incheon. On October 10, 2022, prosecutors requested life sentences for Eun Hae and Cho Hyun Soo for multiple attempts to murder Yoon Sang Yup and for insurance fraud. They emphasized that the pair had planned to disguise the murder as an accident to cover up their crimes. On April 26, 2023, the Seoul High Court sentenced Eun Hae to life in prison for murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Her lover and accomplice, Cho Hyun-soo, was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Lee Eun Hae did not agree with the verdict and appealed on May 1, 2023, but her appeal was denied. With this sentence, the case comes to a close. What are your thoughts on this shocking case in South Korea? Share your opinions with us in the comments below. See you in our next video.